All right. Good morning. What is up, everybody? Welcome to another live stream of Fast Break Bets presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at this time, going through the entire NBA slate. Today, we have a massive slate, 11 games. It's been a long time since we've had a slate more than 10 games, which we have today. It's admittedly not the best slate of games in the world because there's a lot of blowout potential. I think the closest spread is like 5.5, which is disgusting for 11 games. Some injury nonsense, some back-to-backs. Either way, we're going to have an official pick for every single game, except for one, which I'll say now, the Celtics versus Hawks game. I'm waiting on odds to come out for more players, so I don't have an official play on that. I'm going to give you a lean that we'll get into and hopefully can lock in once odds are posted. And then obviously we'll do the same game at parlay at the end of the day as well. Last stream, we were able to make it a green stream. We were profitable, admittedly on a limited slate. I only had 5 plays total, but we got 3 of those 5 to cash, up over 1 unit due to the odds. Let's keep the hot streak going. I think that's 6 of 8 streams that we've now been profitable. Make sure, before we get into everything, to subscribe to the Betting Pros YouTube channel if you are not already. And then most importantly, get all your comments, your questions, whatever you want in the chat. I see Tyshawn already in here. I need the dough more than you know. I don't know if you did that rhyme on purpose, but that sounded good. The more fun these streams are is when they're as interactive as possible. So even with a massive slate, please get all your questions and stuff in. My talking points won't be as long for each pick because we have so many, but I promise you the same level of research and thought went into each one. So we can get into it. Again, remember to comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Mostly comment in the chat. I am monitoring the chat. First pick. This is in the Hornets versus Cavaliers game. And I'm taking Caris LeVert over 11.5 rebounds plus assists. This is best offered at minus 104 odds per the Betting Pros consensus. Rebounds and assists is a little bit of a random market. I think I've only had this play once, rebounds plus assists, prior to this. But I actually looked into it and really, really liked this play. Number one, it's a perfect fade of recent results that we've been doing all year. He missed this in his last 2 games, especially his last game was pretty gross. I forget the exact number, but he went pretty aggressively under it. Granted, that was in a game against the Heat where he only played 20 minutes and they got just smoked. If you look at his last 10 game sample size, even including the last game, he's cashed this. He's cashed it in 5 of his previous 8 games prior to missing it in 2 straight games. And in 2 of the games that he missed, he had exactly 11. In another game, 3 games, he had exactly 10. So the floor is there. And he also has a ceiling with this prop as well. This 11.5, like he's had a game with 19, 17, twice, 14, 13. So even though he's hit it in exactly half of his last 10 games, if you look into that a little bit more, it doesn't really scare me off that much because, again, he's come close twice, 3 times if you want to count the 10s. And yesterday's game was such an outlier. Like they were blown out in like the second quarter. Even this spread, I think it's 10.5, even if they do end up blowing them out, it's unlikely that he only plays 20 minutes. And with all the injuries that the Cavaliers have, Donovan Mitchell is still out. Dean Wade's out. Max Strus is out. It's just a much higher, much more increased role for Caris LeVert. And looking at each one of these individually, so the assists first. If you take out the last game, he played the Heat. Again, he only played 20 minutes. That was clearly an outlier. If you take that game out, over his last 10 games, he's averaging over 8 assists per game and over 12.5 potential assists. And that assist number, I think, is going to continue to be pretty high because he's still, like I said, the Cavs are still missing a bunch of players. And if you look at the data since March 1st, he's actually averaging more assists than Darius Garland. And even if you take the data since March 1st with Dean Wade out of the lineup, he's averaging over 4 assists more per 36 minutes. And he's been playing, again, outside of last game, like 35, 36, 37 minutes per game. This is also a pretty good matchup for his assist as well. He's, excuse me, sorry, let me clear my throat a little bit. Jim 800, we thank you for this good info. We thank you for tuning in. And Sam, what's up, buddy? Thanks for the help. Again, thanks for tuning in. So the Hornets are allowing the 5th most assists per game to Caris LeVert's playmaking style. And they've been allowing a ton of assists recently. If you look at players' assist prop, whether they hit the over-under versus the Hornets, the last 3 games, Like 70% of the guys have cashed their assist over. And then for rebounds, so his over-under rebounds is set at 4.5. That 4.5 number is something that he's cashed in 6 of 9 games. And 6 of 8 if you take out the rout against the Heat last night. The Hornets are allowing the 7th most rebounds per game to his rebounding style. So all in all, I love this play for Caris LeVert. He's been so good in an increased role for the Cavaliers that I think that's just going to keep going. Next up, Celtics versus Hawks game. So again, this is the game where I don't have an official play. I have a lean. We just need to wait until odds come out. It's Payton Pritchard, points plus assists. Sorry. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to automatically lock it in as soon as odds get posted. I do want to look into the odds. So make sure to keep just checking out the BettingPros app and all that good stuff to see when odds are posted. But just look at Pritchard's last 5 games. 15 points, 8 assists. 20 points, 9 assists. 19 points, 3 assists, so still 22 combined. 23 points, 7 assists, and then 14 points, 13 assists. That's his last 5 games. Assuming when the odds get released, they're somewhat reasonable, I'm smashing his over. Whether Derek White plays or not, Derek White's currently questionable. Drew Holiday is confirmed out. And this is a total that he's been crushing even with Derek White in the lineup. So again, don't blindly bet anything. You want to wait until the odds come out and then check the Betting Pros app for more information. Follow me on Twitter at my handle. It's not on the screen anymore, but it's at Jedi Modai, and I'll officially post whether I'm playing it or not. Next up, Pistons versus Knicks game. I'm taking Josh Hart double-double. Best offered at plus 102 odds per the Betting Pros consensus. This is, in my opinion, an absolute gift getting this for plus money, even at plus 102. I think this is a phenomenal play for the value. Even with the risk that sometimes Josh Hart just decides that he doesn't want to score, he could get a double-double with just rebounds and assists. And look at his minutes played. He, like Tibbs, classic Tibbs, is running him and a couple other guys just absolutely into the ground. Now, there's always a potential that this game turns into a blowout. But in his last 10 games, Josh Hart is averaging over 42 minutes of playing time per game. There's only been 3 games in his last 10 which he didn't play 40 minutes. In those games, he played 39, 39, and about 35 and a half minutes. So those numbers alone would be a lot for a normal guy, and they're low for Josh Hart. Looking at his same last 10 game sample size, he's averaging 5.4 assists. Now that's the lowest one. That's why I went with it first. But even with averaging 5.5 in his last 10, he's hit at least 10, 3 separate times. And then he's averaging 11 points and 12 rebounds in his last 10 games. So it's a double-double, not a triple-double, and we're getting it for plus 102 odds. My guess, the reason why the odds are priced the way they are is because of the blowout potential. But we've seen him get double-doubles in the first half, which I think could easily happen in this game. So I think this is a phenomenal play. That's our first one. Not our first one. That's our third play, second official play. Before I get into the next pick, I want to talk to you about DraftKings Sportsbook. Fast Break Bets is presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. And listen, we're on to the Sweet 16 of March Madness. If you want to, the thrill and excitement, if you want to get in on March Madness, is here. March Mania, DraftKings Sportsbook is one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps, giving customers a shot to turn $5 into $150 instantly in bonus bets with any college basketball bet. You want to dive in on a UConn future because they look phenomenal? Go do that at DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the app, use promo code FANTASYPROS, promo code FANTASYPROS. New customers can bet $5 and turn that into $150 instantly in bonus bets only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Again, with code FANTASYPROS. The crown is yours. Next up, Nets versus Raptors game. I'm taking Nic Claxton over 11.5 rebounds, best offered on DraftKings at plus 124 odds. So this is another play kind of similar to the Josh Hart one. It's just excellent value from an odds perspective. DraftKings is giving this to us at plus 124, which is a really, really good price. And I understand that 12 rebounds is really high for Claxton. It definitely is. He's only cashed it once in his last 10 games, but there's a reason why. There's a reason why it's so high. And Sam DeMar going to crush again. Great matchup against the Wizards. Yeah, I didn't have anything on DeMar, but he's been phenomenal. And Jalen Green has been so good. He's been phenomenal as well. But for this Nic Claxton play, the over-under at 11.5, the books are basically begging you to take his under. And that always, for me, that always makes me want to do the opposite and take the over. Now, if you look at the entire season, you're thinking, oh, the Raptors aren't the best matchup in the world for Nic Claxton rebounds. They allow the 11th most rebounds to his rebounding profile. But what happened in October and November and even December really doesn't matter now because OG, Anunoby, and Siakam are not on the team anymore, and Jakob Poeltl has been injured. If you look at recent stats, you can kind of understand why this prop is priced so high. 3 straight centers have cashed their rebound cashed their over against the Raptors. 5 of the last 6 have cashed their over as well. And if you look at the past 30 days, the Raptors are allowing the most rebounds to centers by far, not even close. They're allowing 18.9 rebounds per game to centers. The next closest team is at 17.2. That's 1.7 full rebounds below the difference between them and the next closest team. With Jakob Poeltl hurt, they just have no front court depth. They also have no shooting, so they shoot a lot at the rim. They can't get any rebounds themselves. It also just leads to a ton of rebounds to centers because of where they're taking shots from. Absolutely love this play for Nic Claxton to get the 12 rebounds. That is technically our third play for the game. Next up, this is in the Wizards versus Bulls game. I'm taking Nikola Vucevic, 12 plus rebounds, best offered at plus 106 odds per the Betting Pros consensus. So those of you that follow along with me know this is now the third time in the past 10 days that we've gone with Vooch rebound props specifically. And listen, he's come through for us each of the last 2 times. Let's hope we can make it a trifecta tonight, 3 for 3 with Vooch rebound props. So his main line technically is at 10.5, or at least it was overnight, but it got steamed up all the way up to 11.5. But I still like it at the plus money odds that we're getting. And the thing with Vooch is you want to target his rebound props in certain matchups, right? He's not an auto going to collect a ton of rebounds. For example, last game, he had 2 rebounds against the Celtics. That was not a game that you would have wanted to target Nikola Vucevic at all. It's also a perfect time to fade recent results because he only had 2 rebounds. The game prior to that, so not last game, 2 games ago, he had 14 rebounds against the Rockets. That was a game in which we bet on him. That was a good matchup. 2 games prior to that, he had 13 rebounds against the same team he's playing tonight, the Wizards. That was another game that we bet on his rebounds over. Another game, if you look at in this past 10-game sample size that he went over, was against the Pacers. Now, I didn't have him in that game, but that was a good matchup. The reason why, and I mentioned this with the previous one, Nic Claxton props, you want to target center rebounds against teams that shoot a lot around the basket. All 3 of the teams that I mentioned, teams that he went over against, they're all top 5 in terms of shots within 5 feet from the basket. So basically in the paint. That includes this matchup tonight against the Wizards, who attempt the third most shots, specifically within 5 feet from the basket. And another reason why I like this play a lot for Vooch is because the Wizards, they run at such a fast pace that just leads to a ton more stat accumulation in general. On the entire season, the Wizards are allowing the most rebounds per game to Vooch's rebounding style, which makes sense as they're allowing the most rebounds per game to centers on the entire season. Now, the last 30 days, the Raptors have them beat, but on the season, it's been very juicy for Vooch rebound props. That's what we're going with for this one. All right, so now we're about halfway. Before we get into the next game, I want to talk to you about the Betting Pros Discord. If you are looking to up your game in sports betting, look no further than the exclusive Discord community that Betting Pros has gathered, bettingpros.com/chat. In the Discord, Betting Pros has gathered a team of expert handicappers providing you with free picks, NFL during NFL season, college football. And now we're looking at March Madness, college basketball, MLB is starting soon, hockey, tennis, golf, whatever you're looking for, you can find in the Discord. Player props, live betting, futures, much, much more. Get in on the action, connect with like-minded individuals, sports betting enthusiasts such as yourselves. Elevate your own betting strategy by gaining insights from the pros. Join us today in the Discord. Take your sports betting experience to the next level. So we're a little over halfway done now. Next up, Blazers versus Rockets game. So Sam Young likes Jalen Green because he's been on fire. He definitely has. That's not the prop I'm going with. I'm going with Fred VanVleet over 8.5 assists. Best offered on DraftKings at plus 105 odds. There were a couple assist props that I really liked today. VanVleet is another one. I love this matchup. And even though those of you that follow me know I went with VanVleet on Saturday and he didn't come through for us, I'm riding with him once again. In that game on Saturday, in which he had 7 assists, he went 10 of 15. 10 of 15 from three-point range. That, even for Steph Curry, that would be making 10 three-pointers would be an anomaly. And I'm not saying he's a bad shooter. Of course he's not. But if you look at his 9 games prior to this most recent game, he hadn't even attempted 10 three-pointers. And then he made 10 last game. And he still had 7 assists. Like, even with 10 three-pointers, he had 7 assists. And even if you include last game, he's been crushing his assist number in the last 10 games specifically. He's cashed 9 or more assists in 7 of his last 10 games. One of the games that he went under, he had 8 assists. The other 2 games he went under, he had exactly 7 assists. So his floor has been pretty good with assists, even in games that he makes 10 three-pointers. And against this Blazers team, this matchup, the ceiling is there as well for him to not only get to 9, but to get to 10 if you wanted to take double-double, or just take 10 plus to be a little bit safer. So the Blazers, they've been getting up a ton of assists to point guards recently, right? They had a 2-game stretch against the Clippers. James Harden combined for 24 assists in both of those games. He had 14 and 10. Again, those are back-to-back games against each other. Prior to that, a game against the Bulls, they had allowed 10 assists to Ayo Dosunmu on an over-under of 4.5. Against the Pelicans, 8 assists to CJ McCollum on an over-under of 4.5. Game against the Celtics, Payton Pritchard had 8 on an over-under of 2.5. The Blazers are allowing, and this is on the entire season, the most assists per game to Fred VanVleet's playmaking style. And as I mentioned, VanVleet has been crushing his assist number recently. If you look at the last 10 games, he's averaging the 5th most potential assists in the entire NBA. So big pool of players, averaging the 5th most. And he's tied with Luka Doncic, who we're going to get into, in terms of the most actual assists per game in the NBA. So I think this is an awesome spot for Fred VanVleet. This is one of my favorite plays of the day. Next up, Suns versus Spurs game. I'm taking Kevin Durant over 23.5 points. This is offered at minus 120 odds minus 120 odds per the Betting Pros consensus as the best price. This was a play that I found using the Betting Pros app, the cheat sheet, 5-star positive expected value banger. They project Durant to go like 4 points above his over-under. They project him to score 27.5 points. So this is a situation where I'm taking it at his main line. If you wanted to pump him up to 25 plus, 26 plus, even 27 plus, you get obviously better odds. And that still would be within the projections that Betting Pros has Kevin Durant to score. Kevin Durant cashed this. He cashed this in his last game. Sorry, I was trying to think before I was speaking. He cashed this last game against the Spurs, and he didn't even play the fourth quarter, right? I think he had 25 points, did not even play in the fourth quarter in that game. Now, it's certainly possible that he doesn't have to play in the fourth quarter of this game either. He could do it again. He could cash this in 3 quarters, because I love the matchup for Kevin Durant in this game. For those of you that follow me, one of the plays that I was able to cash over the weekend was Kevin Durant in his stat against the Spurs. The reason why, Spurs are allowing a ton of pull-up 2-point jump shots, a ton of mid-range jump shots as well. Kevin Durant leads the Suns in both of those categories. Even as the scoring has been down recently, he still leads the Suns in both those categories. 2-point pull-up jump shots, mid-range jump shots as well. Now, generally, I try to bet the opposite of what has happened recently. So because he went over last game against the Spurs, I normally would fade that. But because he did it in 3 quarters, and in the off chance this game is closer than it was, I think he might actually have to play the fourth. So more opportunity for him to cash this over for us. I love this play. It's going to feel a little bit scary, but I think it's a really good one. Next up, Grizzlies versus Nuggets game. I'm taking Nikola Jokic under 27.5 points, minus 115 odds per the Betting Pros consensus. This is another positive expected value play that I found on the Betting Pros app using the cheat sheet in their projections. Betting Pros projects Jokic to score 25.7 points in this one. So not quite as juicy of a difference for the Kevin Durant play, but still pretty good, like 2 full points below what we need him to get it at in terms of our over-under of 27.5. And Jokic in the regular season is always a little bit scary, because if he decides that he wants to score, he could score against anybody. I'm not necessarily sure that's going to be the case against the Grizzlies, because unfortunately for the Grizzlies, they have nobody left on their roster. And this isn't a great matchup for Jokic anyways. Like I said, he could score against anybody he wanted to, if he wanted to score. But generally, the way the Grizzlies play defense is they don't have a ton of size down low without Steven Adams, but they're pretty aggressive in how they guard big men. So they don't normally get crushed by guys like Jokic who score a lot of baskets in the paint via post-ups, right? They allow the 11th fewest points per game specifically to Jokic's scoring profile. It's not like they're the hardest matchup in the world, but definitely not a good matchup either. They're middle of the pack, kind of similar, close to 11th in terms of points allowed via post-up. That's the majority of how Jokic scores his points. So if he decides to score, yeah, we might get burned with this one, but I can see more of it being a playmaking game for Jokic. So his over assists could be a good number as well. The most confident I am personally is in his under points, which is why we went with that. All right, so we have 3 picks left before we get into the last 3. And then I guess we also have our same game parlay. I want to talk to you about a 1-year premium subscription giveaway. So if you want a chance to win a premium 1-year subscription to Betting Pros, it's your place to start betting smarter, not harder. All you need to do is subscribe and comment. So those of you that are watching the video would appreciate it, or I guess the live stream would appreciate it if you could subscribe if you are not already. And then, of course, comment. You do those 2 things, and that's how you get entered. We're going to announce a winner right here on the channel. So turn notifications on so you're alerted when new episodes drop, and then you can come in and claim your prize. 1-year premium subscription giveaway. Comment, subscribe. A couple comments here. Tyshawn, if Simons is playing, I'm live betting him in green 30 plus. That's not a bad play. I mean, both those guys are going to get up the shots, so I think that's good. And Sam Young, yeah, I didn't even mention that part. Factor in the blowout in the game 2 against Memphis. That's true. If it ends up being a blowout, just more opportunity for Jokic to not go over, to go under. And King on top when I've been waiting. Yeah, I mean, it's on new episodes that get posted. It's not here on the live streams. So we have had people that have gotten it before. So I guess you'll get it, or at least it'll get announced soon. All right, next game, Mavericks versus Jazz. I'm taking Luka Doncic over 10.5 assists. Best offered at -1 at 25 odds per the Betting Pros consensus. I mentioned that we would talk about Luka. Here we are. This is another play, and we're kind of going back to a lot of this. This is a great, great fade of recent results. These 2 teams literally just played a couple days ago, and Luka only had 8 assists in that game. So people are going to be like, oh, he only had 8 assists. I'm hammering his under. But generally, I know I didn't do it with the Kevin Durant play. That generally makes me just want to bet the opposite, right? And generally, the entire season, and also recently, Luka has a pretty high potential assist to assist ratio. The reason why is because a lot of his assists come via lobs when he's running a pick and roll, and the roll man gets a lob opportunity or just an easy dump off down low, or he kicks it out to an open shooter on the corner. High percentage shots either way. And to illustrate that point even further, in his last 10 games, Luka is averaging 16.4 potential assists per game. That's the most in the NBA, by the way, the most potential assists over the last 10 games. He's also averaging 10.3 actual assists, which is tied with Fred VanVleet for the most in the NBA. So it's a 1.6 to 1 ratio from potential assists to actual assists. So basically, I don't know if that was too confusing, but like for every 16 potential assists, he should have 10 actual assists, right? Hopefully that makes sense. Last game against the Jazz, Luka had 17 potential assists, so a little bit above his average, not a ton, but still a little bit above his average. But he only had 8 actual assists, well below his average, and a sub 50% assist ratio for Luka is very much an outlier, especially when you consider the fact the literal game before against the Spurs. So 2 games ago for Luka, he had 16 assists on 20 potential assists. I would not be shocked at all in this game if Luka had another 17 potential assists, but instead had 13 actual assists. So if you wanted to take him to get to 12 plus, I think that would be a great option as well. I've given that one out as well. And the reason why this is such a good matchup for Luka is because in general, the Jazz are a great matchup for point guard assists, right? On the entire season, the Jazz are tied with the Wizards in terms of allowing the most assists per game to point guards in the NBA. If you look specifically at how Luka gets assists, unsurprisingly, the Jazz are literally number 1 in terms of assists allowed to Luka's playmaking style. The reason why Luka crushed his assist number, not last game against the Jazz, but 2 games ago against the Spurs, is because the Spurs are a defense that allow a ton of points specifically to pick and roll men. The Jazz do as well. They allow the 5th most points per game to pick and roll men. That's Dan Gafford. That's Derek Lively's music. The Jazz also allow literally the most made and attempted catch and shoot 3-pointers in the NBA as well. What are the 2 ways I mentioned Luka gets assists? To pick and roll men, to guys in the corners via catch and shoot opportunities. It's a great opportunity for Luka to get a bunch of assists. So, all right, 2 more. 76ers versus Kings game. So for this one, we're going with Keegan Murray over 2.5 made 3-pointers. Best offered at plus 120 odds per the Betting Pros consensus. So this one, it goes a little bit off, but not really when you let me explain it, my ethos, because he just hit 6 3-pointers last game. Normally I'm like, okay, I don't want to touch a guy that just had 6 3-pointers. But generally, Keegan Murray is a pretty streaky shooter. So when he goes over his, when he makes three-pointers, he does it in waves. He does it in clusters. Like if you look at his entire season in games in which he has hit 3 or more 3-pointers, they're all kind of bunched together. Like he'll do it in 3 straight games. He'll do it in 4 or 5 of 7. Then he'll miss it in 4 straight. He'll miss it in 4 of 6, stuff like that. And because he just hit 6 threes last game, the hope here is that we're catching him in the middle of a heater against the Sixers team that has generally been pretty good for 3-point props. Murray cashed it last game he played against the Sixers. He cashed it last year when he played against the Sixers in the 2 most recent games against them. So we're kind of just riding the heater with this one for Keegan Murray. He's the ultimate catch and shoot guy for the Kings. The Sixers, they allow a ton of inside penetration because all their good defenders are hurt. I guess Kyle Lowry's fine, but Melton's their best guard defender. He's hurt. Embiid obviously covers up a ton in the paint. He's been hurt forever. So I think it's a really good matchup for Keegan Murray made 3-pointers. And for plus 120 odds, the value is very, very good. Okay, last up, then we have our SGP, the last game we're going to talk about. And this is actually the game in which we have the same game parlay as well. I should have mentioned that earlier. Pacers versus Clippers game. I'm taking James Harden over 16.5 points. Minus 115 odds at DraftKings. This dude burns me every time. I'm guessing that's Keegan Murray. I cashed him once, and I think I've gone with him twice so far this year, and we're 1-1. So hopefully we're 2-1 after tonight. All right, so James Harden, again, over 16.5 points. This was another 5-star positive expected value banger that I found via Betting Pros, positive expected value play. They project Harden to score 18.7 points in this one. So if you want to take him over 17.5, even over 18.5, because if it's close to 19, you could do that. 20 plus if you really wanted to get spicy. I'm just taking it at the play that you see here. But this is a really good play. Obviously, I mentioned that it's positive expected value. It's also a great opportunity to fade recent results, and it's a really, really good matchup against the Pacers as well. So yesterday, James Harden played against the Sixers. He only scored 12 points. Kind of a gross performance from Harden. He had a ton of assists, but he didn't score a lot. Now, there is a little bit of a risk in that both of these teams are on the second half of a back-to-back, but if you look at games in which Harden has played on the second half of back-to-backs, he hasn't been horrible, right? Like he's cashed it in 5 of his last 10, but he has some games where he's crushed the over in good matchups. 30 points against the Hawks, 29 points against the Bucks, 23 points. I forgot to write down the matchup of that one, but those are all in the second half of back-to-backs. And last game, for whatever reason, the Clipper starters didn't play the last 6 minutes of that game. They were down by 20 points, and Ty Lue just waved the white flag, saying, you know what, I'm good. We have the second half of back-to-back next game. Live to fight another day. So in terms of so that's the fading of recent results. In terms of the matchup, the Pacers allow the second most points per game to a shooting profile and literally the most points per game to a scoring profile. You wouldn't think that because James Harden doesn't attack the rim, attack the paint like he used to. But the Pacers defense, where they're weak, is giving up points to guys that run a ton of pick and rolls, guys that ISO a ton. That's James Harden, right? He'll ISO, dribble the ball a ton, or he'll run a pick and roll. That's how you score against the Pacers. They don't give up a lot of assists to point guards, which we'll get into, but they do give up a lot of points to guys like James Harden. So I absolutely love this play. That is our final pick of the evening. Now it's for our same game parlay. And this is a pretty juicy same game parlay in terms of odds. It's plus 1,000 odds. And it is going to be for the Pacers-Clippers game. So leg number 1 is the leg we just talked about, James Harden over 16.5 points. Great matchup for him to score. Leg number 2 is James Harden under 8.5 assists. As I mentioned, the Pacers just don't give up a lot of assists to point guards at all. They don't send help. They don't crash down. They just allow guys to score, but they don't allow guys to assist. And then our third leg is Andrew Nembhard, 2+ made 3-pointers. My quick blurb here is that the Clippers have sneakily been allowing a ton of corner threes recently. Andrew Nembhard both makes and takes the most corner 3-point attempts for the Pacers, so I think it's a pretty good matchup for him. Plus 1,000 odds is pretty juicy. And that was our same game parlay. If you are looking to build your own same game parlay, check out the Betting Pros Same Game Parlay Builder. You combine multiple bets in a single NBA game, and you can leverage different insights like correlated bet recommendations. So like how correlated are the bets are individually to each other. You can look at EV ratings. So just the highest positive expected value plays for each game, cover probability. So if you want the highest % chance of your plays hitting, ton more you can do. Perfect your own betting strategy by analyzing Betting Pros correlation grades and projections. Stay ahead of the curve by looking at same game parlays placed by fellow bettors via the app. Start winning your parlays today at bettingpros.com/parlay. And that's all we got. Huge slate of games today. Hopefully we have another day in the green like we've been having recently. Again, I appreciate everybody who's been tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to the Betting Pros YouTube channel, all that good stuff. Thanks for watching, and I'll check with you on Wednesday.